Welcome back to the Construction Show, or maybe it's your first time watching. We cover all things construction, and we have this would be their third episode with Crownsman, their second episode on the Construction Show. We've got Polydeck on. We've got Alex Caruana. He is the national manager of Canadian Aggregate, and Shane Gee, right? G. I checked before and then I did it wrong. Shane G. He is the director of aggregates for, is it the U.S. or all of, or
for half the U.S.
For half the
U.S. states.
Okay, gentlemen, welcome to the show. Great to have you on. Which one of you wants to give the Polydeck introduction for anybody who doesn't know the company?
I'll let Alex do that.
Oh boy, okay. Well, Polydeck is the pioneer in modular synthetic media. So that's fancy speak for polyurethane and rubber screen panels. But more and more, we help people with unbiased information so they can diagnose their screens, up their production tonnages. And we're really about being a very human company as well. So connecting with our customer and helping them reach objectives with real people.
Well, we just had Matthew on the show, and he talked about the company culture, the history of it on the first episode we did with Polydeck. Now I'm just drawing a blank on who was on that. John Griffith and Perry Miller. Yeah, they were on. And they were talking about company culture, and so it's like, if a company says it once or twice, but even off the camera, you guys are talking about it. So it's very clear, and where. Aside from that, what do you think sort of sets, or maybe that's included, what sort of sets you apart in the industry? Where do you see that advantage that Polydeck has?
We're innovative. We're not just going to rest on our laurels and just rest on what our successes before. We were the pioneers, but we didn't stop there. We continued on.
Yeah,
made innovations in technology.
Yeah,
and we're a caring company. We're not just that somebody's going to supply you a 1x1 plastic panel.
Yeah, so a good example of that is, urethane and rubber media really started off, it was born out of a necessity for wear life. The things needed to last long, right? But Polydeck has its own tool room. And at the end of the day, we don't hesitate to, frankly, invent what a customer needs. So now, what most customers are looking for is high throughput, lots of stone production through the same square footage on their machines. So we will not hesitate, pick a number, a 1-inch opening panel. We'll have more than a dozen options in each material, for example, not just to complicate life, but because at some point a customer expressed a need and we don't hesitate to deliver on that, where, we're not just another me too, we're going to make this and that. We will invent what customers need.
Yeah, has the aggregate, do both of you come out of the aggregate space? Like, how long have you been in it, even before Polydeck?
Altogether, 28 years for me.
28 years
with Polydeck.
Yeah. So in the 28 years in the industry.
Yeah, 21 with Polydeck.
Yeah, and then how about you, Alex?
I'm at about the 18 to 19 year mark in the industry. So 11 with Polydeck, and then the balance was on ready mix and aggregate production.
Okay, so you've both been in the industry long enough. Has it evolved? Have the pain points changed? Have the demands changed? What are you sort of seeing in the outside of Polydeck in the industry?
Well, a couple of things. The readiness and the proven nature of what we do has really increased.
For sure.
But I would also say that the demands have increased with it, right? I gave a case study presentation a little bit earlier today, and, some of it made me chuckle because it's like, oh, wow, this really is a we want it all situation. And I think that's what Shane and I run into all the time with customers. And hey, all the power to them, because Polydeck's found ways to do it. But what I mean is, yes, we want the open area, so the high throughput, but we don't want to give away the wear life. We don't want to give away the noise reduction. We want it to be light enough to run on small equipment. I mean, really where the product and the technology is now is sort of a you can have it all situation.
For sure. And as Polydeck, we've adapted to that. As Alex mentioned earlier, we went from wear to now high open area to solving individual problems with the plugging and the blinding and the, actual gradations of the product that the guy's trying to get off the end of the screen.
Let's talk about our Heavy Industry World Tour, brought to you by Savannah Equipment, supplying mining equipment worldwide. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour. Did you know cementitious binders can be responsible for up to 70% of the total GHG footprint of mine backfilling processes? Now you can replace up to 50% of the binder in your mine backfill operations with Graybond, Graymond's new low-carbon cementitious binder. This lime-based alternative binder maintains a 40 to 70% lower GHG footprint compared to typical cement and can adapt to varying mine conditions without compromising performance. Learn more about Graybond at graybond.com. With Fender Dunlop, you know you are getting the best conveyor belting in the market. That's because they ensure the integrity of their conveyor belting by monitoring each step of the manufacturing process in their North American facilities. Focused attention is given to each belting order to guarantee that they produce a belt that will assist the customer in reducing operation costs, maximizing uptime, and improving revenue. Visit FenderDunlopAmericas.com to learn more. Dayquip specializes in the design and manufacturing of attachments for all makes and models of compact excavators, wheel loaders, crawl dozers, and articulated dump trucks. You can choose from any of their engineered attachments, or they can design and build to your specifications. All of their products can be shipped anywhere in North America, hassle-free. If you don't see it, just ask and they will build it. Check out their website, www.dayquip.com, or email them info@dayquip.com for sales, quotes, and support.
Polydeck has done things like and we've talked about it on both other episodes. We won't spend too much time with it, but just the fact that they're 1 foot or 1x2 squares, depending on what you're doing, just right there alone. I think it was either Richard or Richard Clanton was on, or Matthew was saying about, it's about 2 hours. I thought 2 hours that's being really generous. 2 hours to swap out a steel screen. Those are two people that know what they're doing to get that screen out, and another one back in 2 hours. I would say in almost every case it'd be more than that, including clean up, shut down, the whole thing. Yours, what does it take to swap out if one does get damaged? We're talking, what would that take? An hour? Maybe.
Are we changing out the deck, or are we just changing out
just one piece?
Just panel
just a panel replacement. Yeah.
A panel's 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Locking it out, getting on, changing a panel.
Yeah, the tool reduction's a big piece of that, right?
Yeah.
With a piece of side tension cloth, you've got a guy possibly in a man lift outside with an impact gun, which they lost and had to go find, and it took 3/4 of an hour to get it.
Yep.
And then they're out there, and his buddy's on the inside trying to hook that screen cloth out. Whereas now you remove the
fingers and
outside.
hands everywhere. Yep.
That's right.
Sure.
And you've got a big open hole underneath that big giant piece of cloth, right?
Yeah.
So now if you're doing it in smaller 1 or 2 square foot sections, the open hole is much smaller in size. So it's a lot safer for the guys. They're just on the inside of the screen. You don't have the man basket outside.
Mm-hmm.
And the tooling required is a lot less. So that, hunting for tools before the job is a lot reduced.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's probably a good time to bring up the other big challenge that every heavy industry is facing is finding people. So likely if you got 2 people swapping out a screen, one of those is new, almost guaranteed. One of those has been on the job maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Most likely more. A lot of the work now that sort of frequent labor, I would say, is third party. You have contractors coming in. So now you have yet another disconnection in the game of telephone, right? How to do the job versus how to do it right. But doing it with such a simple thing, it really is like a Lego set, right? You've got these small block areas that are, I'm going to say a little tough to get wrong.
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah. It's pretty simple. And the thing that we do too is when they have those new folks, we're able to come in and train those folks.
Yeah.
And actually come into the plant, because the maintenance manager will say, hey, I've got 5 new guys that don't have a clue what's going on. Can you come show them what's going on?
Well, and that
Polydeck will come in and do that.
Right. Is that another, again, let's say 15, 20 years ago, is that a lot of companies, mines are operated on contracts. I'm sure they have been for years, but are you seeing more of it where it's one step removed? Like you mentioned the game of telephone, are you seeing more and more of that where it's, people are coming in to do one single job and then they're off site and then the next, are you seeing more, or is it pretty similar to how it's always been?
Texas, where I'm originally from, and watching the plants there, there's a lot of guys that the plant people don't actually do the work. They bring in contractors, but they work there full time, so they do everything in that plant. So I'm seeing guys that are going from welding to putting in screen panels to
Yeah.
whatever it takes.
Yeah, I mean, that's frequently the case where I'm at. Now, the contractors do swap. It's a fairly aggressive marketplace. So you still end up going in to advise and coach a little
Sure.
bit for the different part change outs and so on, because, you know, while it's a very simple product, I have also seen it done wrong. So you want to be there for at least the first go around. And one of my favorite things to do is right before maintenance season starts, go in, do a little bit of theory with the guys. You know, you're doing your coffee and your sandwiches and all that stuff, but then I'll arrange it to be on an actual, you know, something's happening with the screen that day. It's a maintenance day. So after that first little theory bit, everybody's warmed up. We actually go down to the machine. I work with them, and it's amazing how many questions come up.
Yeah.
Right? Where if you just stood in front of the machine, you say, "You guys got any questions?" No, everybody knows what they're doing. But
Yeah.
once you climb on there, you've locked out, you're on there working, all of a sudden gets that dialogue going. And it's a really nice way to connect with the people actually doing the work. And also you're making sure it's done right.
Are you quite often putting people on site with this? Is that sort of a standard procedure for you?
Yeah, like a Polydeck staff member, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
There's usually representation whenever we're doing an install.
Okay. Are people like you mentioned earlier that people are kind of I forget the phrase you used, but they're just sort of looking for everything, you know, lighter, more efficient, you know, more throughput, you know, the list goes on. Are people more educated now though? Like when they see the product, do they understand all, like, okay, we have 10 different options here, or is there still a lot of education that needs, because honestly, I didn't know about Polydeck until last year when you were on at CIM in Montreal. So are people pretty familiar, or is there the huge educational piece you still have to carry out?
Yeah, we still have to do that. We still have to educate people as we go forward. And it's probably been mentioned before in maybe one of the other podcasts before, but Polydeck is almost like Kleenex, right? I mean, people say, I've used Polydeck before, that I don't understand, you know, or I've used Polydeck and it didn't work. Well, probably didn't use Polydeck. You used urethane panel, but it was just a urethane panel. We provide solutions. So that gives us the opportunity to come in and give them that education of, hey, we can give you, going back to Alex's example, we can give you a heavy duty 1-inch opening panel, or we can give you a different version that's got a lot more open area. May not wear quite as long, but you're going to get more throughput.
Right.
Or we can give you in the middle of the road. Whatever.
Yeah. I don't think there's any ill intent in terms of staff being educated, but I think it being such a fast moving marketplace, for example, if you go back in my career path, you know, first production engineer job I had at a quarry, you know, the largest quarry we had 3 production engineers. By the time I progressed to that quarry, it was 1. Right. So people are trying to do more with less, not just screens, but also people, human beings.
And now they're doing them on multiple sites. You'll have one engineer servicing multiple sites. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I had a little taste of that myself. And so, I mean, you're trying to wrangle your head around cone crushers, impactors, the screen itself. And now you're asking me to get as granular as screen media. So I think that's where Polydeck excels, is just having somebody to help out. You know, you got a question, here's what we're going to do. You don't know you have a question yet. Here's what's available to you, right? One of the other case studies I went over earlier was a recirculation loop. So a screen that's feeding oversized to a crusher. Well, these guys had this screen in service for almost a decade. So actually Polydeck had advanced that opening size so many times over that they didn't know the question to ask, right? So you create a dialogue on site. You see what their pain points are. Crusher finds, cone crusher amps getting really high. The load to this crusher is getting really high. And that's where you come up with what we call our DMAX, our higher open area line. And you give them that for 3/4 of the screen, because they don't need the huge impact resistance once you get out of the feed point. They don't know the question they need to ask. So that's kind of some of the stuff we help with.
Yeah, I guess that's what you're seeing a lot. People just don't. Yeah, that's the thing where you don't understand a product. You don't even know. Yeah, you don't even. You just go. I guess that's why people say, "Hey, we just need the world. We need it lighter. We need more throughput." They just list off what they need, because how else really, I guess, can they communicate it?
Correct. Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing is we can go in and help them do that, by going in, looking at their operation and seeing how they run, watching it, going and taking a look, inspecting it when it's not running. I mean, we can go in there and tell them, suggest to them things that can help them up their production.
Yeah, we stare at a lot of rocks
Oh,
in
for
our
sure.
day to day. I mean, it sounds funny, but it's true. Sometimes you just got to go there,
Yeah,
clear your mind, look at the conveyors, look at the feed point, look at the screen. And when you think you've seen it all, just pause and
Oh, there'll be something else. Yeah.
stare at it some more. I've had customers fighting oversize issues, and you're driving yourself crazy. You're looking at screen panels, which one's blown, you're hunting for ghosts.
yeah,
And then you stare at it run, and they'll just have like a piece of their discharge zone where a stone's hitting a plate and going back where it's not supposed to. And it's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? But
right.
yeah, it involves a lot of just time and
being
care
there.
and attention.
Yeah,
That's right.
What
For
do
sure.
what would you suggest for, we talk, and I probably don't do it enough on the show, is we talk so much about sort of what a company can do for the client. What would you suggest for the clients? Let's say someone's watching this and they're going to, they're going to call you. They know they've got some problems or they have some goals. How would you sort of set up the conversation if you were the client to be able to be efficient in the conversation with your team?
Yeah. You're talking from the customer's perspective.
From the
calling
customers,
us.
yeah. If you're on the site going, okay, I'm interested and I need to sort of prepare. I need to get the information together to have this conversation.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, lay out your issue, right? Obviously, if it's created you enough of a pain point that you're thinking of calling somebody, get your gradations together, just some basic information, what you're feeding, what is the trouble? Is it on muddy, rainy days? Your screens are blinding over, like what is your problem? Characterize it just verbally, and then really we coach the way from there. It might be the case that they still need to get a little bit more information, but at least it's a starting point for what's the problem, how are we going to come up with the solution for you. It's one of our favorite things to do, isn't just selling product but selling a solution. If we can make somebody's life easier, that's key. I mean, one of my favorite things, I got to know a customer on an install. Our children are similar ages. And, when it's all said and done, I did my follow-up visits and screens running quieter. Everybody's happy. They're lasting longer. And he said, you know what, dude, you're not just giving me uptime back. You're giving me home time back. And that really resonated with me because our children are around the same age. And this guy was working 12-hour shifts.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the shift, moving wire cloth around so they could try to get the most life. Well, now he goes up to the screen every evening with a check sheet, okay, all is well, go home.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, I was actually curious with the, I'm just going to stumble through it and then you can correct me with all the right terms. But if you've got a screen, let's say, what would be a fairly good mid-sized screen? Like
6x20 is
6x20, yeah.
Road, yeah.
So it's kind of if it's those 1x1s, then it's a 6x20. So 6 plates across, 20 down. Now, would you ever change around the perimeter? Do you change the how do you say the whole size? Like the gradation or
like the aperture size?
The aperture, yeah. So would you ever change it depending on where?
Most definitely.
Okay, so what would that look like? What would be the scenario for that?
Well, as you're screening correct, as the feed, your bed depth's a lot thicker at the feed end of the machine. So therefore you're trying to get some of those, the smaller the smaller particles to come on through the machine. So you start with a larger opening and sometimes maybe not even larger. I kind of messed that up, but
That's okay. It's long form. You can correct yourself. That's the advantage of it.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. So, and you may need to open it up as you go down the machine as that bed depth lessens so that the material can actually try to find a hole as it's going down the machine. Or if you're trying to fine tune a gradation that, hey, we just need to capture a little bit more of that 1 inch. We may need to put an 1 1/8 down at the bottom, discharge into the machine.
Yeah, dams are another common one,
sure.
right? So underneath spray bars, sometimes we try to meet that effort with a dam so that you're holding the material back
Mm,
and creating what we call stratification. This is when you shake the bag of potato chips and the big pieces go to the top, and then you give the
Yeah.
little ones to your kids. But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
on a screen, believe it or not, you're doing the same thing. So sometimes in dam locations under those spray bars where there's a little bit more down pressure, you might use either a more rigid aperture or a smaller aperture in that area because that panel is going to get a little bit more beat up, right?
Yeah.
Whereas on the rest of the screen, you might use a self-cleaning, a VR design, or a high open area because you want all that throughput where the wear life isn't as necessary. So yes, you can do all sorts of funky blending.
All the blended hybrid decks, right? With
Mhm.
with wire, I mean whatever. I mean with our metal decks.
How was it done? Let's say 40 years ago. Let's go back. Was it just one size? Were they doing all this sort of stuff, or is this sort of a fairly new thing?
40 years ago, when Polydeck started, a little over 40 years ago, we're approaching. I'm getting closer to 50 years now.
Yeah.
I mean, so 46 years ago, I mean, Polydeck just pretty much you had 1x1 urethane squares with some holes in it, and it was on a 2-inch channel stringer. There was no open area whatsoever. It was just, hey, you wanted longer wear life, we're giving it to you.
Oh yeah,
Right,
worked
yeah.
for that.
And
Yeah.
then customers said, wow, this is great. They're wearing forever, but my production has went to squat. See, I corrected myself. I almost said something.
Yes, yeah, that's good.
And but so then we went on and developed our new pop top system, and we're able to get a lot more open area in the same footprint.
Yeah, you're going from a 2-inch rail to a half-inch rail. So, less skeleton means more openings,
Right.
means more open area, more throughput. So, now Polydeck has taken it even further than that in terms of the hybrids Shane was mentioning, where we have wire cloth modules and self-cleaning wire modules that can be introduced again at a discharge end, wherever you might need this little bit more of a closer cut, where the cut of the gradation is closer to the actual opening size or aperture. So, I mean, the permutations are nearly endless. And this kind of goes back to why we make ourselves available to go on site with the customer so that when they do characterize, whatever's not working for them, we can sort of bring the tools out of the toolkit because Polydeck's got, thousands of like 1,400 dies, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's not even layering in, those dies can be shot in different materials and different fastening.
Mm.
It is overwhelming for a customer to, even try to know all of that despite their best intentions.
So what is just to wrap up here, what should people expect if they called you tomorrow, they've got a plant, what should be the expectation, the process, the timeline? What's that first call like? What's the actual ordering process, lead times, things like that?
For example, in the Texas area, and we all go to market a little bit differently. We have DCs, distribution centers in Texas, so we're on the ground with the customers,
Right.
and that necessitated that for us. And that back in the early 2012, 2013, so we were actually open. So customer calls us there, we get the initial, hey, what's going on? It's like you had asked before. What's your bottleneck? What's your issue? What machine are you running on? What are you trying to make? Okay. She gives us that information. Okay. I can be there. It's Tuesday. Got an opening next Monday. Will Monday work? We can be there before you start up or after you shut down, so we can come up, crawl on the machine, take a look around a little bit. And then if you're going in the morning, then we can watch it run after you fire up. That way we can see some of the issues you've been talking about. Because if you're just looking at a screen without it running, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what kind of issues they're having.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on being the fastest in the world. I mean, I'd say from the point where a customer knows and understands what they want to the point of reception at their actual gate, I'm very happy always to tell people we are the fastest because it's our only focus. I mean,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what we're doing. To us, it's not just another widget that we're selling as part of a large turnkey plant or whatever. So, sometimes it's a little bit harder to get to market because it's so nichey and it's so specialty. But once a customer is using it, we pride ourselves on being the fastest. And on that note, too, of, crawling around the screens, one thing I would encourage producers out there to do is call your local Polydeck guy and take advantage of the free plant surveys. They're unbiased, they're not tied to whatever type of equipment you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And these can help you see layers of the screen that your maintenance guys just don't typically have the luxury of time to get in on, right? And we'll do it. We'll write it all up. The decision is ultimately theirs. Our guys are not pushy. We pride ourselves on being neutral with people and just provide the information for
sure.
a customer or a prospect, right?
Sure. And then when they have those questions, then we can help give suggestions and certain things that we can do as far as Polydeck to help their issue.
What would a typical turnover, if someone is what would a turnover look like if someone's still using steel, or they want to do a hybrid of it, or whatever they want to do, if they're going to turn over to a Polydeck, by the time, if they started the conversation today, how long would it be before they'd be using your products in their plant?
4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks generally.
Yeah, for a standard retrofit.
For a standard retrofit conversion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For sure.
And how is that quite a bit of your business where you are you doing a lot of that?
Yeah, it's pretty even split, I'd say, with what we call new OEM installs, where a customer tells us, hey, we want to use a brand X. Our engineering team will actually get together with brand X's engineering team so that.
Oh, you
all
are
the
doing that.
fitment-
Okay.
Yeah, all the
Mhm.
fitment, all the three-dimensional modeling's taken care of. Because one thing we want to offer customers is once you give us your objective and any running parameters that you maybe already know, then we actually take that, run with it with the equipment vendor that you've picked to size everything, get sort of the nerdy, nitty-gritty stuff taken care of for you. But then you walk out of that with the performance guarantee too. And what that means is that if you bought the 120 square feet on that 6x20 we talked about earlier, we guarantee that the 120 square feet is going to do what we said it's going to do. So if it's 25% out, it's our responsibility to provide you with those panels to dial it in to where we said it was going to be.
Gentlemen, I think we can leave it there. Thank you for joining. Actually, I wanted to ask Alex, what is the craziest place you've been to in Canada so far? And I'm thinking weather is going to be the main factor here.
Oh,
You've gotten out of the plane and went, really?
Oh boy, I think northern Quebec would be the most intense weather.
Yeah.
That's where like all your old war wounds start to feel like they're 5 minutes from having happened. Pretty craziest situation was actually, I mean, you can edit this in or out if you want, but I was on a Saturday install and the staff was done and fella comes out stark naked yelling at us on the screen tower, I'm going home, baby. And
wow.
bits of them
there we
about
go.
I had no fair to see, it is what it is. It's a great job. You see some awesome things, some less than awesome things. Sure. And it's a wonderful job. It really is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Try going even in Quebec City, walk outside along the St. Lawrence with those big chunks of ice floating down and that wind coming off. It is unbelievable. Like, if that doesn't wake you up, nothing will.
Well, you know what? I always offer people to travel with me, and somehow nobody ever shows up between November and February. I mean, I don't know. It must be a coincidence or something.
Oh no, it's no coincidence. But no, and Shane, you mentioned coming out to Texas. That's somewhere I've only got a chance to spend literally hours in Texas. And there's so much I want to see there. So hopefully I'm coming your way pretty soon here because it's getting way overdue. We have way too many people we deal with in Texas who may not have been there.
For sure. Anytime.
Gentlemen,
look us up. Thank
you very much for joining. I'm sure we'll be doing it again. It's great to have you on.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Appreciate you.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. Of course, we'll have links to Polydeck. You can connect directly with Alex or Shane. Their website is polydeck.com. We'll have links in the description, of course. But they're also on LinkedIn. They've got a YouTube channel. I think, Shane, what did you say? Or Alex, sorry, 14,000 different dies or something?
1,400 dies.
1,400, yeah.
Materials, fastening, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, there's so many different options for sure.
So they can help you. If you have the problem, they will be able to help you. So go check them out. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will see you on the next episode of The Construction Show.